Ever since the thought first took root in her mind, the daughter seemed to become a different person. She was no longer gentle, no longer asked her mother how she was in the mornings or sat down to chat in the evenings. Instead, there was a cold silence and glances full of frustration. Every time her mother accidentally dropped a bowl or plate, the daughter would clench her jaw and say, "You can't even do the simplest things anymore." Though the mother simply bowed her head in silence, her clouded eyes shimmered with a quiet sadness, not because of the scolding itself, but because those words came from the very daughter she once raised with sweat and sacrifice. The weight of work, family, and constant exhaustion gave the daughter a growing sense of justification for her growing coldness. In her heart, her mother no longer felt like a beloved figure, but more like an unnecessary presence in an already cramped and stifling home. She even found herself irritated by her mother's nighttime coughs or the slowness that made her wait. One rainy afternoon, coming home after an exhausting day, the daughter walked in to find her mother on her knees, picking up grains of rice scattered across the floor. She had accidentally spilled the rice pot while trying to help rinse it for dinner. Instead of feeling moved, the daughter coldly said, "Just stop. Don't touch anything anymore. Just sit still and let me be." That sentence sliced through the heavy air like a cold blade. The mother looked at her, not with anger, not with resentment, just quiet resignation. But somehow, it was that silence, that patient endurance, that made the daughter feel even more stifled. Deep down, she felt as though she was living with someone she could no longer speak to, no longer connect with, and no longer needed. And then, what no one ever imagined, happened. One night, after a gentle rain had just stopped falling on the porch, the daughter quietly slipped into the storage room. She began shaving down pieces of old wood her husband had once used for building a cabinet. Piece by piece, she assembled them meticulously, silently. No one in the village knew. No one asked. Only the sound of hammering, sawing, scraping echoed through the night like a strange, eerie melody, dark and chilling. The next morning, as the mother sat on the porch, her quiet eyes gazing up at the sky, the daughter dragged the wooden coffin she had just finished and placed it right in front of her. No explanation. Just a cold, emotionless command. "Get in." The mother didn't question it. She didn't panic. She simply stood up, slowly, trembling, and stepped into the coffin as if she had known all along this day would come. The wind swept through the porch, carrying with it a strange feeling, as though something pure had just been taken away forever. The heavy wooden coffin lay motionless on the porch, damp with the lingering mist of last night's rain. Inside, the mother lay still, as if she had accepted a fate long written. No cries, no pleas. Everything unfolded in a silence so chilling it seemed unnatural. The daughter closed the lid of the coffin, her hands trembling slightly, though her eyes remained cold and resolute. Something in her heart stirred, but she smothered it immediately, the way one might extinguish a small flame with a twisted sense of pride and warped reason. She dragged the coffin slowly down the narrow path, across the garden, toward the edge of the property where a high hill overlooked a deep, hollow valley. It was the same place where, long ago, mother and daughter used to sit in the breeze, watching the sunset after long days in the fields. Now, it was the place she had chosen for something she couldn't even bring herself to name. The wind blew hard, tossing strands of silver-streaked hair across the daughter's face. She took a deep breath, gripping the coffin handle tightly. But just a few steps before the cliff's edge, a soft sound broke the air, like fingernails gently tapping on wood. She froze. Her heart pounded. She thought she had imagined it. Then it came again, clearer this time, rhythmic, steady. Not frantic, but enough to shake her to her core. Hesitantly, she opened the lid. Her mother still lay there, eyes barely open, her face calm, almost serene. Slowly, the mother opened her eyes fully and looked straight into her daughter's. There was no anger, no accusation, only the quiet gaze of someone who had weathered far too much. "I know you're tired," she said, her voice low and even. "You can do what you feel is right. But before you push me over, I only ask one thing." The daughter said nothing, lips pressed tightly together. She gave a small nod. The mother raised her hand, gently resting it on the edge of the coffin. "This coffin you made, it's strong, well built. You should keep it. Maybe one day, your own children will need it for you." The words struck like lightning. In that moment, everything around them seemed to fall silent. The daughter stood frozen, unable to speak. Her once hardened heart now ached. In her mind's eye, the image of her young son appeared, his innocent eyes looking up at her, the same way she once looked at her own mother. Her hands let go of the coffin handle. She stood there, wind still howling around her, her chest hollow. And in that fleeting moment, she understood. What she had once called useless was merely an excuse for the love that had quietly drained from her own heart. That afternoon, the daughter did not push her mother off the cliff. She said nothing. Silently, she dragged the coffin back home, slowly, heavily, as if each turn of the wheels was grinding into her own conscience. Her mother lay still inside, asking no questions, placing no blame. The air along the way home seemed frozen in time. Only the wind and the sound of wooden wheels scraping against dry gravel broke the silence. When they reached the porch, the daughter opened the lid and gently helped her mother sit up. Her hands touched that frail, bony back as if for the first time she was truly touching old age, fragile, small, helpless. The mother smiled. A soft, sorrowful smile, like the last bloom of a late-season flower trying to open before it falls. The daughter said nothing for the rest of that day. But inside her, a storm was brewing. Her mother's words echoed relentlessly. "Keep this coffin, maybe one day, your own children will need it for you." It wasn't blame. It wasn't a curse. It was a reminder, a quiet alarm, that life moves in circles. And how we treat our parents today is the mirror our children will one day look into. That night, the daughter sat alone by the hearth, watching the flickering firelight dance across the worn wall. Memories flooded in. The nights her mother stayed up cooling her fever with wet towels. The first days of school when her hand was held tight in her mother's. The times she fell and scraped her knees, soothed only by a hug. And now, when her mother was frail and just needed a little love. She had thought about discarding her like a broken object. Tears fell before she even noticed. She pulled the coffin behind the house and took it apart, plank by plank, storing the wood neatly in the shed. Not to reuse it, but as a silent act of repentance. That coffin would never be used again. She swore it. The next morning, when her mother woke up, the daughter had already prepared breakfast. A warm bowl of porridge placed gently on the table. "Eat, Mom. It's cold today." The mother looked at her, surprised. Their eyes met and said everything. There was no need for words. Somehow, in that quiet moment, there was forgiveness. There was understanding. From that day on, the mother still sat on the porch as before. But the daughter was different. She had changed. She no longer saw her mother as a burden, but as something sacred. A living piece of memory, a part of her heart, because she had realized some things, once lost, can never, ever be replaced. Time kept passing slowly, but without pause. The seasons changed once more, the sun rose again, and rain continued to fall on the old porch where the mother still sat every afternoon. But now, she was no longer wrapped in cold silence. Her daughter had changed, not just in her actions, but from deep within. She now often sat beside her mother, gently combing her hair, sharing little stories from the day, or sometimes, they just sat quietly together, watching the golden fields bathed in the light of the setting sun. That change began to spread through the whole family. The little grandson, who once barely noticed his grandmother, now clung to her every day. He sat and listened to her tell fairy tales, helped her pick vegetables, wash the dishes. These seemingly small things brought a strange warmth to the house. As if, when love is present, everything else softens too. One afternoon, while making tea for her mother, the daughter looked at her, eyes full of emotion. "Mom," she hesitated, "I'm sorry for once thinking of you as a burden." Her mother simply smiled and gently placed her aged hand over her daughter's. "I never blamed you," she said softly. "It's enough that you understand now." In that moment, the daughter realized something. The most precious thing in life isn't who can do what for us, but who stayed by our side when we needed them the most. And her mother, though frail, though no longer able to do the things she once did, was still the strongest presence in her life, the irreplaceable part of her memory, her quiet, enduring shadow. From her own experience, the daughter began to share this lesson with those around her. She told neighbors and friends, "Don't wait until it's too late to realize how priceless our parents are. Love them while you still can. Because one day, we'll grow old too, and we'll hope our children treat us with that same love." Her words weren't fancy, but everyone who heard them grew thoughtful. The wooden coffin she once built for her mother still sat in the corner of the shed. She didn't throw it away. She didn't burn it. It remained there, quietly reminding her that she had once come close to losing what mattered most, simply because of her own carelessness. And from that day on, in the little house at the edge of the village, every afternoon, passers-by could see two figures, one elderly, one middle-aged, sitting together on the porch, surrounded by birdsong and the faint scent of hay in the breeze. They didn't need to speak much, but anyone walking by could feel something unmistakable: love, forgiveness, gratitude. The simple things, but enough to warm an entire lifetime. Since her father passed away early, her mother had been everything to the daughter. The mother had once been strong, shouldering everything at home, working the fields, preparing meals, keeping every piece of clothing intact. But time spares no one. Now, the mother had grown old and frail, her back hunched like a bamboo branch at the end of the season, her hands trembling each time she lifted a cup of water. Every morning, she would sit silently on the porch, her eyes fixed on the fields where she had once toiled tirelessly. The hurried footsteps were no more, nor the cheerful laughter during harvest. Now, she simply sat there, quiet as a shadow, present, yet almost invisible. At first, the daughter continued to care for her mother with the familiar love she'd always known. But gradually, as work became more demanding and life weighed heavily with financial worries, job stress, and raising children, the elderly mother, once the backbone of the family, began to feel like a silent burden. The daughter never said it aloud, but it was there, in her increasingly distant gaze, in the rushed meals she left behind, in the sharp tone she used when her mother accidentally spilled a glass of water, all painting an invisible wall between them. The mother stayed silent. She didn't complain or show sadness. Every afternoon, she still sat there, watching her daughter hurry past without daring to call out. Once in a while, she would quietly ask, "Are you tired, dear?" But the answer was just a dry nod, followed by a sigh heavy with meaning. "I wish you could help me somehow." Then one day, as the daughter walked past the porch, she suddenly stopped and looked at her mother sitting motionless, eyes gazing into the distance. A strange thought flashed through her mind, unbelievable, unsettling, even frightening. Why is she still here? She doesn't help with anything anymore, just sits there, waiting for meals, for a glass of water. That thought, at first just a fleeting moment, began to grow, clinging to her mind like a shadow that wouldn't let go. From that point on, her attitude shifted. She no longer saw her mother as the one who gave her life, but as something worn out in an already too crowded house. Her mother still sat there, a presence that made the daughter feel both guilty and irritated. Something was smoldering inside the daughter, something she couldn't even name. But then, she began preparing something no one in the village would have ever expected.